Namaste and welcome to the Bharatvaarta Weekly. I'm Roshan Karyappa. I have Neerav Kanodra here with me, and together we'll bring you the news and events of the week that was, what matters to you, what's really important, and why it is significant. We're missing our good friend Abhishek Paul today. Of course, he's on a Christmas break and he couldn't make it. If this is your first time here on Bharatvaarta, we publish politics, policy, and culture podcasts focused on India. Some fascinating content, very diverse speakers, and so on. So follow and subscribe to us on all of your favorite platforms. If you're a returning visitor, do consider rating us or reviewing us on these platforms. It'll help more people discover our content. Well, we have a lot of things that happened over the week. India and Pakistan engaged in a war of words at the UNSC Council. Infosys, the IT major, is celebrating 4 decades of existence, and it's really a seminal achievement, I would say. Then we had the India-China LAC confrontation at Arunachal Pradesh. On the defense readiness front, the last of the 36 IAF Rafale aircrafts reached India. And at the same time, ISRO also tested the Agni 5 missile. And in politics, Raghuram Rajan has finally joined Rahul Gandhi in the Bharat Jodo Yatra. And in the world of sports, of course, the biggest headline is the FIFA World Cup finals today on 18th. We're going to talk to you about both the teams, Argentina and France, and maybe play a little bit of probabilities as well. So, Neerav, a lot to cover. How are you doing today?
All good. We can also maybe talk about the episodes that we put out this week. I especially like the episode on Twitter with Ashish Chandorkar and Amit Paranjpe. And I like one insight which Amit Paranjpe gave, right, is the difference between making another Twitter only platform, right, Twitter lookalike for India, which probably coup is there, but that doesn't satisfy because you cannot reach out to people. The value of the network is in the number of people on it. And give a nice parallel example of TikTok, where China came out with another product which wasn't really there. It was like a different product, and then others have actually tried to clone aspects of TikTok. So if for the Indian tech ecosystem, it's not about creating a Me Too product, right? Like what China did with closing off its ecosystem. So you have Chinese YouTube and a Chinese Twitter and a Chinese Facebook. But what you need to do is create a original platform where people are there. And Ashish also added that people's attention spans are finite. So, and I probably believe what we might see, we could see some sort of an aggregator platforms where maybe from different social media feeds takes it up and aggregates and curates as per the person. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But that was a really nice, insightful episode.
Yeah. No, I think it ties with the fundamental ethos of Twitter as well, right? Where you sort of connect over content rather than people, right? And maybe if you're following artificial intelligence or some kind of politics, etc., these folks can be well beyond your borders as well, right? So it definitely makes sense from that perspective to have a sort of a global public square, as Elon has said that Twitter will become. Do check out that episode, very wide-ranging conversation, and it was fun to talk to Ashish and Amit after a long time on the podcast. It's available on all your platforms. Well, with that, let's talk about the first piece of news. India and Pakistan faced off over Pakistan foreign minister's objectionable remarks against Prime Minister Modi at a special meeting of the UNSC focused on a global counter-terrorism approach. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar told the media on Thursday that the world perceives Pakistan as, to quote, the epicenter of terrorism, as the country still shelters terror groups. Dr. Jaishankar said that those who hosted Osama bin Laden did not have the credentials to sermonize, and that one cannot have snakes in the backyard and expect them to only bite the neighbors. Responding to this, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto described Prime Minister Modi as, to quote, the butcher of Gujarat, and said that these are the prime ministers and foreign ministers of the RSS, which drew inspiration from Hitler's SS. India strongly condemned these remarks, calling it a new low even for Pakistan, and reminded them of the events that led to the creation of Bangladesh. Neerav, this is quite a terse exchange, right? What do you make of this?
Well, also, first thing, what Pakistan Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto is using is classic bait and switch. So in the UNSC committee, is talking about terrorism, where Pakistan has been known to harbor terrorists. You know that a lot of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, etc., terror groups are present in Pakistan. Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan. So you cannot respond to that. So what do? Is you clearly try and make some other false allegations So to make one thing look less bad, talk about something more bad and wait and switch and try and throw the ball in somebody else's court, right? But this doesn't solve. So first, whether whatever Bilawal Bhutto said is true or not, and it's definitely not true, what he has done is he's trying a distraction strategy, and two wrongs don't make a right. Whether or not India is whatever it is, we haven't harbored cross-border terrorists where people have gone on and attacked other countries. So it's a completely different statement. And in fact, India is a victim of terrorism, right? So completely, this is what he said was like, I would say, bordering ridiculous. As FM Jaishankar said, it is reaching a new low even for Pakistan, right? Even by Pakistani standards. And then finally, I think Jaishankar has been very smart and prudent about it. And he's faced off, like in the response, about like basically we do not need to give any credibility by responding to the comments of Bilawal Bhutto on PM Modi or on foreign minister or on the RSS itself, right? Because that would just amplify it and give it more media coverage. What has to be focused on are the facts of what the problem is, which is terrorism, and what are the steps to solve it, right? So I think Jaishankar has been like he's a seasoned diplomat. He knows how to respond well to these comments, and he's done that. Making such comments, right, actually only kind of reduces Pakistan's own credibility. Another one which Bilawal Bhutto mentioned was trying to virtue signal that they have not been buying cheap Russian oil, right, and trying to get into the camp of the West. But India has been opportunistic. India's hands have been tied. That India couldn't get weapons from the US to protect against Pakistan. The reason why India is buying Russian arms has been to protect itself against Pakistan and non-state actors which have kind of the establishment's support, to say the least, in the mildest language, right? So, if anything, India has been opportunistic and India has been open about it. India has not done anything behind the scenes, right? We've just been open about it. So, even these kind of comments is very, I would say, kind of crass, and they shouldn't be given too much weightage. Actually, France and England were supporting India for a permanent seat at the UNSC, but obviously that would get vetoed by China. That is also very well known. This archaic structure of the UNSC, which might have been appropriate in the 1940s, is definitely not. And maybe, I don't know what needs to be done to change it. But definitely, I think such kind of comments are not worth amplifying. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I think for a country that relies on foreign aid and perhaps exports from onions or terrorism, as you call it, right? I think Pakistan does talk a big game. You should hand it to them for that at least, right? I mean, all these foreign conferences or even the lobbyists and so on that we've earlier talked about. They do have a lot of clout on that front, right? But yeah, and it's pretty unfortunate, right? I mean, there are certain diplomatic norms and principles, right? I mean, calling the prime minister of another country in such strong words, right, is absolutely not done. And
so another thing is actually what Indian people have actually done, I think, is by protesting outside the Pakistani embassy, and we've actually amplified his comments a lot more, right? That more people are aware. It's a classic Streisand effect. Mention it. Yeah. He's got the response what he deserves from the foreign minister, and I think this is just going to blow off as it is.
Yeah. No, and also it might be an interesting ploy by Mr. Bhutto to sort of curry favor with the Pakistani army and the ISI as well, right? I mean, because that is also very clear that, hey, I mean, that's the best way to sort of, climb up the ranks in the Pakistan political climate at least, right? Is to be very anti-India, explicitly so. All right, moving on. Infosys, a company that played a pivotal role in the country's software space, has completed over 40 years in the industry. On 13th and 14th, Infosys organized a mega event to commemorate 4 decades of excellence. Nandan Nilekani, who is currently the chairman and has played various roles at Infosys, said that Infosys was India's first startup and quipped, "I am the last of the jokers left." Started by 7 folks, Mr. N.R. Narayanmurthy, Mr. Nandan Nilekani, Mr. S. Gopalakrishnan, Mr. S. G. Shubulal, Mr. K. Dinesh, Mr. N.S. Raghavan, and Mr. Ashok Arora. The company was started with a capital of just 10,000 rupees and has grown into a 6.65 lakh crore company. It operates in over 50 countries and employs about 3.5 lakh employees. Well, Infosys is one of those shining stars in Indian IT, in Indian industry itself, I would say. And today we have a lot of this startup action, and there's so much of enthusiasm and optimism. But I think the folks at Infosys were the sort of great grandfathers of whatever's happening today. They started that whole IT wave in the 80s and then the 90s, and showed that we could compete at a global level on something, right? Today, I mean, Indian IT talent is world class, right? I mean, if you look at top 20 IT companies in the world, I mean, a good number of them operate out of India, right? Have large bases in India at least. And this was possible because I think Infosys is more than a company, it's an institution, right? And, I mean, if you look at NRN talk, a lot of the times he talks like a sort of statesman, right? Very, very different from the kind of doglapan sort of you hear today, right? I mean, in the startup circles. Very coincidentally, that book released as well last week. And it's a bit ironic, the kind of the chatter that we have at both extremes. I think Infosys is an institution, whether you look at corporate governance, whether you look at the fact that they created a mass of wealth, right? Like an amazing amount of wealth for employees, lakhs of crores for employees, right? I mean, you hear stories routinely living in Bangalore of, peons and drivers and folks like that who made amazing riches thanks to the Infi grant, right? And that's an amazing thing. I've been catching some of these interviews of NRN and along with Sudhamurthy, his wife, and it's just a fantastic inspiration for folks to truly build something that outlives all of us, right? Yeah, so fantastic a milestone, and I hope it lasts another 40 more years, maybe more than that as well. NRN has already said that we should probably look at 100-year Infosys, and the way it's headed, who knows? I mean, it might very well happen. And props to the current CEO Salil Parekh as well. I mean, he has done a fabulous job steadying the ship after the whole Vishal Sikka fiasco before this. But yeah, congrats to the team, and very, very inspiring. Moving on, Indian and Chinese troops clashed on the Arunachal Pradesh mountain border. Over the past week, reports of a clash that occurred near Tawang came out. On Tuesday, Defence Minister Shri Rajnath Singh informed the Parliament that Chinese troops tried to transgress across the LAC on December 9th to unilaterally change the status quo, but were beaten back by Indian soldiers. He made it clear that the actions were provoked by the PLA and that India has asked China to refrain from such actions and maintain peace and tranquility in the region. Nirav, this LAC, I think, is a seasonal sort of an occurrence, right? I mean, there are transgressions almost on a weekly basis. Should we be worried about this?
So, one heartening thing here is at this time, India has been caught well prepared. And second thing is, see, China is the country with the largest number of land borders and like disputes with even more, because they've got like island disputes with Japan, with South Korea, with even Philippines, right? So they have the strategy, what they call is salami slicing. Try and slowly capture area and then say that this is yours. Not unlike like in Ramayana, what the Ashwamedh Yagna was, that till your horse runs, that is your land, right? Basically, China is trying to do that kind of a strategy. Second thing is, right now, China is actually opening up from its like zero COVID strategy. You're seeing a lot of other noise. Even Shanghai has started to like shut down schools again, but they've not kind of like put restrictions on people. So you have some domestic noise, etc. It's a nice distraction strategy as well in your local news, right? And in like Chinese statements, they always claim that all of this is ours and India is illegally occupying it, right? So there are always two sides to the story, and they go on with their narrative. So, anyways, see, if you think about it here, India has done a tremendous job on like the Border Roads Organization, the BRO, of having very better supply chain, better roads, everything connecting to our border areas, right? We've been maybe a decade or two behind China on this border infrastructure, but we're catching up. So that is one thing. Two is all our troops deployment, and the troops are all ready. So this is also like a signal that there are not going to be any easy wins for China, right? A lot of people have like tried to whichever way your political leanings are, they've tried to leverage that into their communication. But I think here, as per the videos or whatever is there, because basically you cannot take firearms within I think some 2 kilometers of the border. So they've been fighting with like sticks and stones. This is like going like and fists, right? And clubs with nails attached to it, right? This is like probably like really old medieval style warfare. But whatever it is that the Indian troops are well prepared and the borders are being watched properly. So I think it's a probably a small skirmish. They're always looking for some weak points here and there. So it is what it is. If anything, I would say is for Indian tourists to enable all of this, right? You enable the economy. We all need to go and travel. So Arunachal Pradesh is also on my travel list. I had gone to Ladakh earlier this year, but only if we go and spend money in those areas, those roads are utilized. If there is like more people around there, this kind of spending fuels all the economy in that area, right? So that's also there. And then main thing is local support. If like the locals always feel that they are Indian, and then the army and all those guys are respected, and we do not get any sort of such incursions, right? So I think that is what is there, and this is just a small face-off, and this also gives a signal back to China as well that India is not sleeping, right? So
Yeah, funny you should mention sticks and stones, right? I think there's a company in Uttar Pradesh that has manufactured these tasers that some of the Indian soldiers have been using as well. It's crazy. I mean, you can't take any firearms into that region, as you mentioned. So this is old school schoolyard sort of fight that happens, right? I mean, and from what I believe, I mean, it happens very, very regularly as well. Yeah, I think, yeah, hopefully nothing to be alarmed about. But yeah, this is just something that the Chinese folks do periodically to kind of keep the tension alive, I suppose. But do you think this will escalate at all, Nirav? I mean, given that, post COVID, China has kind of played its hands and the entire world is sort of looking at a plus one, if not, move away from China strategy. Do you think that this could be used at any point as something to quell India?
So I think this is what they'll try to do. But see, if you look at like whatever the iPhone manufacturing facilities are, they are far away from Arunachal Pradesh or Ladakh, or right. So that is one thing. Thing number two is that possibly, I think, if anything, what probably is more at risk is Chinese funded either NGOs or those kind of things, which will try and disrupt manufacturing at like Indian manufacturing facilities, either like by funneling money via like communist unions or some sort of like, I think that is what maybe China will do. I think these kind of military excursions, if anything, Indian military is much more battle hardened because of like 75-year dispute with Pakistan, right? So Indian troops in the mountainous regions, also in dealing with like local separationists in the northeast, dealing with like small amount of cross-border terrorism even from Myanmar, or like drug trafficking through that border. So I think Indian troops are very well battle tested, whereas Chinese troops, since like the takeover by the communists, haven't really taken part in battles, right? So I don't think that is of a big concern. If anything, maybe the other concerns where they try and like either change the perception of the narrative about the quality of Indian made products, or sort of creating some sort of tensions with the workers, that could be more likely.
Yeah. I mean, this is the land of Sun Tzu, right? Who famously said, you should not even fight a war, right? I mean, you should defeat the enemy before that. Well, on the defense front, the 36th and last Rafale fighter jet landed in India after taking off from France. The Indian Air Force confirmed this on Thursday. Out of the 36, 35 had already been delivered and had been stationed in Ambala, Haryana, and Hashimara in West Bengal. The 36th plane was held back to conduct developmental activities for ISE, that is Indian Specific Enhancement. And on that same vein, the ISRO conducted the latest operational test of Agni 5, India's long range nuclear capable surface to surface ballistic missile. India successfully test fired the nuclear capable ballistic missile Agni 5, and it can strike targets at up to a range of 5,000 kilometers, marking a significant boost to the country's strategic deterrence. I think this is interesting as well. I think ICBM missiles, the range is around 6,000 plus kilometers. 5,000 is close enough. And what I've heard is, I mean, this means that, yeah, we can strike mainland China if required, right? And it's a good deterrence, I should say. They've reduced the weight as well by about 20% to sort of make this range possible. I mean, this is defense readiness is super important. We're hearing of clashes across the border and whatnot. Hopefully, I mean, it won't really come to that, but I think it sends out a strong message to the world that India is capable if it does come to any of those unfortunate circumstances, right? And man, on that note, ISRO cannot seem to stay out of the news, right? I mean, last week we spoke about their testing the hypersonic missiles. The week before, it was their partnership with Skyroot and so on. So yeah, fantastic stuff by ISRO. Moving on, in political news, the former RBI governor Raghuram Rajan joined Rahul Gandhi on his Bharat Chodo Yatra, currently traversing Rajasthan. Soon, the Congress party released a video where, in classic Rahul Gandhi fashion, he sat and had a chat with Mr. Rajan about the state of the Indian economy, cryptocurrency, where Mr. Rajan predicted a difficult year ahead for the Indian economy and that the country had failed to quote, generate reforms needed for growth. Nirav, well, finally it has happened, right? We all kind of second guessed that, Mr. Rajan was political and that he leaned a particular way. But it's good to see him out in the open right now.
Oh yeah, so see, I'll tell you what. One is Rajan has been like, according to me, like as a RBI governor, despite like his very fantastic credentials, was, you can say, like mildly effective. A lot of them before him, after him, everybody's done a great job, right? He was like raised on a very big pedestal by Indian media, etc., right? And second thing is that he himself has flip-flopped on his communication of what kind of economic reform should India do. So while being in RBI or while being RBI governor, he said one set of things. And then after that, he was like very much against things like what the PLI schemes which were there. He was all for saying that, oh, the government can't do much when Air India was being privatized. Now, when it was actually privatized, he said, oh, but this is not in the interest of the nation, that we should have a national carrier. So, Raghuram Rajan has flip-flopped quite a bit, which actually tells you that he's got political ideology rather than just being a technocrat, right? So, which clearly was visible as per his communication over a large period of time. There's a lot of resentment that he had that his term was not extended, that he came in for a 3-year term and then after his term ended, they did not renew it. And then you had another governor. So I think this is one set of things. Second is, see, he is like an Indian citizen. He is free to meet whoever he wants politically. If maybe he has an understanding that if Congress wins, he might be equivalent of finance minister or even maybe potentially prime minister, with say the remote control being held by the Gandhi family, right? And if he's comfortable with that, he's well and free to do that, right? He's an Indian citizen. He can contest elections if he wants and he can join the political party, and fair enough. The main thing what I want to like I just highlight is that all his commentary and all, like he's been saying that India's push into manufacturing via PLI schemes is bad because it will lead to climate change. Like that manufacturing is happening in China anyways. India has like a huge trade deficit with China and India has huge excess labor supply. Then why should it not pursue some sort of reforms? Or he's been speaking against the farm reforms, right? Which actually was something which he himself said that was needed to improve agricultural productivity. So I think what he's done is, it's clearly he's got a political lens and nothing wrong with that as well. But now any sort of comments which he makes need to be seen in that political lens, right? That he's speaking as a person who's associated with one political party. So maybe he has a political agenda, right? It need not always be neutral. He's a very smart person. He's a technocrat. He's a distinguished professor in U Chicago. So I totally see what his point is. But now this has come out in the open. Like you can say the masks are off. Earlier he was trying to be saying things as an independent commentator, right? Which clearly is off. And well, good on him. Like if he wants to join a political party, he's free to join one. Also depends. I don't know how many people actually can name a current RBI governor, or how many people will be swayed to vote for a political party depending on one of ex-previous RBI governor joining that party, right? So that also depends. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think anyone has a problem with the fact that he has a political opinion and a bias, which is fine, right? I mean, indeed, I think everyone does. But I think it was this veneer of sort of neutrality that sort of frustrated people, right? I mean, he was often quoted as an economist and an economist with big credentials, University of Chicago, and so on, right? And on a side note, I hope we get to a point where these kind of credentials are not held up in very high esteem, right? I mean, whether it's IMF or World Bank or whatever else. I mean, these are good plum posts for sure, right? But I think there is a lot of indigenous research that is happening, and I think we should listen to a lot of the common sense that we have here in India as well.
No, no, so exactly. So that's the other point. What happens is sometimes there's a lot of invisible infrastructure in the West because they are at, so India is probably at like per capita income what US was over 100 years ago, right? So there's a lot of invisible infrastructure. There's a lot of things which you kind of take for granted and which is not present in India. So it's very difficult to import ideas and copy paste and just implement those. And what we underestimate is the value of people growing up within the ecosystem, knowing within the system and implementing the changes which this system can handle, right? So I think that is also very important. We've seen that after that with the current RBI governor and even the ones prior to Raghuram Rajan, right? So whether it was D.V. Subbarao or like Bimal Jalan, etc., all of them were competent people who grew within the system. And finally, is what I want to say is we have to think of like institutions. We don't have we fall for this heroes policy or like a silver bullet. Oh, only if we had one one person who could lead an organization and everything will be right. Or one silver bullet will solve all problems, and that clearly doesn't work. You have to carry the whole institution ahead with you, and you have to work in a way which this institution functions from bottom up, right? So that's the other thing.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the most exciting news. FIFA World Cup finals today. France and Argentina will be facing off in the final match today. I think by the time you guys hear it, the results will be out. So Argentina is looking to add one more star to their jersey as they haven't been able to win the World Cup since '86 with Maradona. And France, also with 2 cups under their belt, will try to become the first team since Brazil in '62 to win the trophy for 2 consecutive years. Nirav, are you sort of waiting it out for the finals? What plans for tonight?
Yeah, no. So absolutely, I'm excited. I'll be watching the game. I am supporting Argentina, but like France is like quite a young team. They won the World Cup last time as well. It's kind of almost similar team which is there. Second thing is most of the players play well together because all of them, bulk of the players are from PSG, right? Where actually coincidentally Messi also currently, despite like a long career with Barcelona, but currently he plays for the French team PSG, and he and Mbappe are teammates there. So the French play well as a team. The criticism for all South American teams in the last decade or so, last 2 decades, has been that all the stars play in the European leagues since very young age, and they don't play very well as a team. But like Messi has shown by like a couple of good passes and that he has played quite well. Despite that first shocking defeat to Saudi Arabia, Argentina has regrouped quite well and reached all the way to the finals. France also lost their third group match to Tunisia, but that was when they rested all their main players and kind of gave a chance because they're already qualified with 2 wins. They gave a chance to all the to their bench, right? So both teams have lost one inconsequential kind of match. Both are going into the finals. For Messi, probably might be his last World Cup, hoping that he gets to lift it. Whereas for Mbappe and Giroud and the rest of the French team, and their team is quite young. Maybe they have another chance in the following World Cup as well, right? In the US. So who knows? Anyways, I think it's going to be an interesting game. Also, it was very heartening to see the semis. Argentina won 3-0, France won 2-0, right? Usually in the knockout games in the World Cup, it's very boring, where they play boring defensive football and it goes to the penalties, right? 0-0 and then 120 minutes and goes to the penalties. So I hope it's an exciting game with more goals being scored.
Yeah, one thing is for sure, you're going to see some goals, right? And that's amazing. Uh, I mean, I hope it isn't the Brazil Germany type of situation, but yeah, Mbappe seems to be in supreme touch, actually. And my heart says Argentina, my brains say France. So let's see really what happens. But yeah,
In the last World Cup, Argentina and France faced off in the round of 16, and France won 4-3. And I think Argentina was up 2-1 at a time. Then they scored like 3 goals, made it 4-2 and then 4-3. So like if we see a repeat of that kind of game, that will be like a World Cup final for like years to remember. So yeah, hoping for something like that. Yeah, see, the World Cup has had its fair share of controversy, right from the way Qatar was allocated. It's not a major football playing nation. There are a lot of their players are also like stars which they've taken from like other countries, like who were born in Africa and other countries. There's been a lot of controversy on constructing so many stadiums and a lot of labor or cheap labor from the Indian subcontinent involved, a lot of worker deaths. But I think on the whole, despite all the controversies, the World Cup has been held quite well. The organization, a lot of friends who've gone to see the World Cup, that is there. I think the problem which Qatar might face is after this. Where do you dismantle it? They've said that they'll dismantle some of the stadiums and transport it over to some African nations. And also, like, this is like sometimes it's like white elephant infrastructure which is sitting there, right? Who knows? Maybe Qatar can use all these stadiums to host like a few games in an IPL or something of that sort, right? Or it becomes another destination like the Middle East for cricket as well. I have no idea. I think, despite all the controversies, despite everything else, right, it's gone through quite well. And one of the highlights has actually been the Japanese fans cleaning up the stadiums after they leave. If all of us adopt something like that in our own personal lives, right, that's a very big message. So that's there as well. And hopefully the final goes through without any hiccups.
All right, that brings us to the end of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. If you liked what you heard and watched, please don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite platform so more people can discover us. We have a couple of very good, interesting episodes coming up. We have an election review by Rohit Jayaraman. He's going to be talking about the Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh elections and the rise of various political parties, rise and fall of various political parties. So that would be interesting. And also, I did a wide-ranging conversation with Nimish and Rajiv on the Indian startup ecosystem and how 2022 has been for them. So both very interesting episodes coming up. Do check it out on your favorite platforms. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.